3, 2, 1.
Hello everybody, my name is Juan and welcome to Tonight in STEM. This is actually episode number 9, the show where I interview professionals in the field of, well, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Today I have a very special guest, someone who actually won't say his name just yet, because I would like to actually just introduce him. This individual was actually born on the south side of Chicago, a little town called La Villita. He went to, University of Illinois, got his his mechanical engineering degree in honors, then went to Stanford, also got his mechanical engineering degree, his master's there, and now is on his way to grab his PhD from the University of Michigan in maybe 1 year, has published a paper, has worked in industry with the Dow Chemical Company, has been a speaker / presenter for about 17 kind of presentations, has held several national leadership positions for the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, has had 16 awards, some ranging from scholarships, poster competitions, president awards, and on and on and on. And yes, you can tell I am losing my breath because these are a lot of achievements. And I have an honor to present to you guys Mauro Rodriguez. How are you doing, Mauro?
Doing good. How are you?
Good. I'm doing very well. How's the East Coast? You're more on the north side, right?
Right. That's right.
The United States.
Yep. Exactly. It's Eastern time zone over here. That's right.
So thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. I'm honored and privileged to be here.
No, it's a privilege, honors to have you on, and for you to share a little bit about what you do on kind of day-to-day basis. I guess our first question will start off by, how did you get in STEM? Why did you choose science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and kind of pursue that? Where did it start off?
Yeah, where did it all start off? It's a rather interesting story. I think when you start off in high school, at least that's where I'm going to start off in saying how I got involved in STEM. Being very interested at the time in my even freshman year in high school all the way to my senior year in high school, it's a clear, distinct story where I entered high school freshman year taking Algebra 1 and being very aware that I was behind in certain sense in terms of my ability to do even Algebra 1, and I had questions. I had saying, okay, why did this happen? How did this go about? And then I realized, there were certain things, and specifically elementary school, I was not necessarily prepared to go into Algebra 1 or anything like this. So I began absorbing everything like a sponge, and I said, okay, I want to learn more, and not just in math, but in all my classes, but specifically algebra. I had a rather strong affinity to it because I always found mathematics to be the greatest equalizer in some way or form in my classes. At least that's the way I always found it. And saying, okay, well, maybe I may not be the greatest or the best reader, or may not ever be a good reader or a good person in English and the such. But when it comes to math, it was always this universal language of sort, which made it the greatest equalizer. And so by the time I got to apply for my classes or register for my classes for sophomore year, I noticed on the curriculum they had AP Calculus there, and I said, this is interesting. Can I get there? And the counselor said, yeah, this opportunity is always a way. It's up to you, right? And I kind of had this spirit of con ganas sí se puede, right? All you need is ganas.
Yes,
so I believed in that wholeheartedly and said, okay, yeah. So I had to double up on a couple classes my junior year, specifically in math. I had to take 2 classes in 1 year to get to AP Calc my senior year. And by the time I got to senior year, I had dedicated a large portion of my time to calculus. Although I was never, the top ranks in terms of the school, I wasn't the top 1% of the class population. I was but I wasn't valedictorian, salutatorian, or anything like that. But in terms of this class, I was very dedicated. I defined myself as more or less this person of the hardest working person in the room. That's what I was. You know,
Oh,
I
that's
wasn't
awesome.
the I didn't attribute myself as the most brilliant student in the room, but I was no, that's not a title for me. I prefer to be the hardest working person in the room and the one
Oh,
that you can
perfect.
come to help and say, hey, Mauro, what did you think about this problem? Oh, hey, I worked on that problem all night last night. I
You
worked really
pride
hard to
yourself on
figure
that.
that one, and I'm
Yeah.
happy that I worked so hard to understand it. So, luckily that year, University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign administrator had come into our AP Calculus room, and he had asked the teacher to identify the students that to go downstairs to the main office to talk about college opportunities, and that's where the teacher had identified me as one of these students, and I was always the guy that sat in the classroom in the back and to the left. I was always
Back to
very
the left.
quiet. Yeah, the back and to the left. That's where I was. I was this quiet guy, just working hard. That's all I could do. That's the only way I had envisioned myself. And
So, did you have this as a challenge? Like, did you take all these classes as a challenge? Because, okay, you say you're hardworking, um, but it seemed like you always kind of want to, in Spanish, sobresalir, to go on and beyond. Was that kind of you in high
uh,
school? Like,
Yeah, so when you met me, yeah, see, had you met me when I was in high school, anybody would have met me in high school, they would say, why are you working so hard? And what is your
yeah,
mentality
especially
by
in high
this?
school, because all the kind of high school mentality is, I just want to get by, I just want to graduate, because you're not thinking beyond normally.
Right. No, that's exactly true. That's exactly right. For me, the pinnacle of my or the greatest achievement that I could identify for myself at that time in high school was to get to 18 years old. To just live to that point because not because of anything specific rights that are associated with becoming 18, but rather just given the environment that I had grown up in. I had seen a lot of my cousins and a lot of my family members been trapped more or less by the negative vices in society and in our community. So for me to get us to get to 18 was, at least I remember my family members saying, "Well, this is that's your greatest achievement right there." And so,
Yeah,
but by the time I entered high school, I was very concerned. I was very, yeah, worried. You can even say potentially say even angry of the at believing or having been to the point that I could vividly see society saying, you're only meant to go so far, or you're only meant
correct.
to do certain things, right? And I said, well, maybe let's run a test. I think that's how I felt. I said, okay, well, if let's find out whether or not they're right, whether or not the systems that had been put in place or the education that I had received to that point was right. And so for that, I'm going to try my best to see whether or not I can actually even learn algebra one. Let's see. Let's just find out. And so I put myself. I was dedicated to the work and to absorb all the knowledge because I felt that I could do it, and I could absorb the knowledge. Not from any particular ambition after high school. Okay, I didn't have any particular ambition after high school. I just did it just to. I remember talking to this with the University of Illinois administrator. He was saying, "Okay, why did you work so hard in high school?" I said, "I worked out hard to prove it to myself." And he said, "Well, prove what to yourself?" And I said, to prove to myself that I can learn this material and and that you can still be excellent regardless of whatever ethnicity or whatever background you may have.
Correct.
It's there for the taking, and con ganas si se puede. That's the only reason, the only driver I had. That and I became a rather connected to math. I felt very good about it, being able to learn math. Saying, hey, this is good. It's a universal language. It's the
Right.
thing that equalizes at this level of mathematics and science with the science classes I was taking. It's all fair game,
So
and that's always great.
I want to actually touch on that because it's been a very, very common thing. The whole math. Like, I ask people, why'd you get in STEM? Oh, because I was good at math. That's their answer. And and it's true. You bring up a very good point. It's an equalizer because we understand no matter what language we speak. Um, I say math is a universal language, right? It's all symbols that we can interpret, and it puts us all on a level playing field. So that I just find that fascinating, and how that's like an entry point, and I kind of wonder if that could be like the gateway drug to kind of start little kids and just focus on them on math, because math, they don't have to learn English, they can just learn math and proceed up through the grades, through education, so they have a choice, an even playing field choice of where they want to go. And I think math is the key, the main thing there.
That's absolutely right. I think in addition to that, I would say that exposing them to engineering and science as well early on. Oh, they get introduced in science in their courses, but engineering specifically because I was in high school, and it wasn't until this administrator brought up that word engineering, and I was around. I vividly remember being 17 years old and hearing that word for the first time. And I'll tell you a funny story. I didn't have the most advanced computer in the days. I didn't have this. All I had was a very old compact computer, and I had the Microsoft Office suite. And I remember it was a 1998 suite, and
Oh
in it
wow.
had the Microsoft Encarta. So it was a green CD,
I
and
yeah, yeah, I have that. I had that. I know
so
I'm dating myself, but yes.
so I went home, after you hear a 17-year-old, 18-year-old going home, and then putting that in there and saying, okay, what this guy is, this administrator has said, engineering, what is this? And so I punched it in. This is before the, internet was a great thing
Yeah.
back in the day, but I didn't have internet, so I just had this like Encarta. So I put the encyclopedia in there and I looked it up and I said, oh, okay, but I still couldn't, even though it showed me a few forms of engineering, mechanical, electrical, and even nuclear was on there. But I remember, civil engineering was still on there as well. But the other majors that were also involved, like biomedical engineering, those weren't listed on there yet. That's
Right.
because of the technology and the way the Encarta Encyclopedia had been developed at that time. But I would have been interesting to find out, at least if we could go back and ask that question, what would happen had Mauro been exposed to engineering in a greater context as opposed to just being given the textbook definition? Had he
Right.
been given more than what the encyclopedia definition or what was stated there, specifically in the 1998 version, what would Mauro have chosen? And that'd be an interesting choice. In reality, the
Interesting.
what convinced me to pick mechanical engineering as my choice for my career path. Well, I remember it was a very serendipitous, lucky chance, if you will, choice. It was because my father was a mechanic, and I was involved
Oh,
a
that
lot
that
in working.
story.
Yeah, so I was involved a lot in being a mechanic with growing up as kind of a mechanic's apprentice of sorts with him,
Right.
and it's always there's a whole father and son dynamic there, and I would love to tell you about, but we don't have time. but
Hey, no, no. Take as much time as you need. If we need to do part two, three, four, and five, I'm okay. I think the viewers would appreciate that because it's very interesting, and it seems like you have a lot of stories. So take it away. But first, so you talked the very first word you said is awareness. That you were aware. What made you aware? Why, as a freshman or very early on, made you aware of your surroundings? What kind of was there a life event that happened? What?
Ye-
Why were you so échale ganas kind of thing? Did something just click or what was it? Because that's impressive at that early age.
Yeah, that there's a very powerful driver that led to that. It was the in my eighth grade, my grandfather had passed away. Well, one could say passed away, but others could say it had been a death that had been not fully determined. I think that's the way you could describe that. Saying, well, one could say he died of old age. Others could say no, there was some other effects that could have happened. And I remember feeling this sense of my grandfather had undergone a very serious injury. The whereabouts of how it occurred is still not well understood. Other than he found himself lying on the street one day after, as he had said. I remember him saying this in Spanish, getting hit by a car or some weird form as he was running back home or walking back home. And so, then he passed away 2 or 3 days later. And I remember there was and he didn't want to go to the hospital. I remember this much as well too. It was only for my father who took the courage and said, "No, you're going to hospital." He's like, "No, I'm not going to hospital." He was still trying to walk. He was still trying to do everything after getting
Huh.
hit and having sustained a very severe injury to his ribs and everything. And my father picked him up and we took him to the hospital. But so he passed away right after that. And I vividly remember that was a very interesting event, very traumatic in some way or form, where I recognized this lack of there was no explanation for it. Just okay, this happened. Like, okay,
Right.
and then you say, yeah, but okay, where's the justice?
Yeah.
Where's the explanation? My grandfather could have lived on a couple more years, and that didn't take place. And so what caused it? And so again, this along with and along with the difficulties that I had to get into high school, that in itself was a great challenge because I had to go to a particular high school in my area, my neighborhood, and hey, my father knew, the environment, the gang environment that I lived around was not prevalent, and well, it was not. It didn't help for me to exactly where I lived and to go to this particular high school. So my father said, well, and he had seen a lot of his own nephews and his own brothers go to that high school, not going too far in life, and
Right.
either that or actually leading to their death in some way or form. So for him, it was one of those things where this high school, he could tell that this high school would potentially not lead to a good future for his son. So he did whatever we could to actually get me into John F. Kennedy High School, which is in the more south side of Chicago, and didn't have these kinds of problems. And so that was in itself a whole effort, a whole
Right.
rather, if I could put it in the words, a whole telenovela. It was a whole soap opera in itself. It was very dramatic, this transition to high school itself. So by the time I got to high school, I said, okay, well, here's opportunity, fresh opportunity. There's all these things we had, all these emotional roller coasters we had to go through just to get to high school. And then here I am, day one in Algebra 1, and I recognized very quickly that I am not prepared. And not saying that I'm not prepared, I don't have the materials or anything. I'm saying I wasn't educated sufficiently
You
to
didn't
be
have that
prepared to
educational
take.
base, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So when you see, for example, I vividly remember telling people this. Well, I tell the story to students that I was sitting there in the second day or third day when they handed out a handout sheet for Algebra 1, and it said on the top, it said negative numbers. And I remember saying, negative numbers? No, that doesn't exist. That's not possible, right? And so you feel, and then you understand. Oh, okay. There's a reason why this happened. It's not just me. It's like
Yeah.
I was an okay, good student in elementary school, but then I realized, no, it was my entire class of students, my entire peers who I was with in elementary school who were not prepared for this. And so again, all of this made me understand that I was in a very fragile position of where what most students tend to do around this time is rebel in some way or form. When you're teenagers, you're
Correct,
13,
yeah.
14 years old, you have to rebel in some way or form, especially when you identify this.
Want just get noticed kind of thing.
Right,
You
exactly.
did it the other way. You put in the hard work.
Exactly. So I chose a system. Well, I chose the path. I chose a path where I said, okay, I had seen the path, the conventional path that my nephew, my cousins and my uncles had taken before me, where what was something very prevalent in my community that I grew up in, where you tend to lash out in some way or form. You tend to say, okay, I give up. It's not going to happen. It's this is what the system wants, and so be it. Let it happen. And I said, no, okay. The system, or when I say the word system, I really mean the overall. I don't mean educational system. I just mean the overall institutions that have been put in place around my community. And so at that time, I felt like, okay, let's find out who's right.
Yeah.
Because and I say, okay, between which two points of views? Well, between the points of views of how I grew up around my father, my mother, and my family, we always had this strong sense of dignity, this strong sense of pride, this strong sense of you can make it. Con ganas y se puede. This is something that was very prevalent in my family, even my father's story. And I can tell you my father's story as well, as he had told it to me many times, as he was an immigrant from Mexico all the way to Chicago, and how he grew up through poverty and does not have a formal education, only a third grade education. And so he would tell me a story saying, look, I'm not fully educated, and con ganas y se puede, you can always achieve things. You can always be great. You can always do great things for others and for yourself. And so I had this, and then, me being his son, I always felt like, wow, he's right. He's absolutely right. But yet I could see around me in the environment that I was living saying something completely, which was practically the antithesis to all of this. It was saying the complete opposite.
Correct.
And so I said, okay, let's find out who's right. I'm going to choose either we're going to choose the reality of the situation that I live in and take it for what it is, and fall to a certain particular designed, if you will, a path, or choose the dreams that my father had placed, or my mother's had wanted to be realized by bringing themselves over to Southside Chicago and to live the Mexican American dream. And so I said, well, I'm choosing the dream. Let us see, and all we have to do is, if all we have to do is work hard, well, guess what? My father taught me early on, as my mother did as well, how to work hard. And so let us realize the dream instead. And so I chose the path of transforming my dreams or the reality of my family, my community's dreams, realizing them through the power of hard work and grit, right? This idea of grit and this overall lasting spirit of con ganas si se puede.
And that's a common theme I've seen as I talk to more and more people is, yes, again, like we were talking math, but this like, how do you teach hard work? Well, as children of immigrant parents, we see that. We see the hard work, and they've taken us out to actually show us, okay, you can either go work in the fields, go work for low pay, or go through the education, the path of less resistance, what seemed to them. And just that math and hard work kind of stuck to us, and we've continued to go forward. And I just find it very fascinating how we have this new generation that we kind of have to teach and somehow push forward that, yeah, with math, hard work, maybe you can do participate in the STEM fields.
Yeah, it's always a matter of, it's when I talk to high school students and make them aware of certain things. I think one of the big pieces that I use as a communication is explain to them, like, look, in the environment that you operate in, you see many different forms of power being exerted in some way or form, and many students, actually, I have this exercise with students, and specifically in Southside Chicago or in the Southwest Detroit, where I usually go, and I say, okay, you have power such as authority. You usually see that expressed in some way or form, and students are very creative. They say, yes, we've seen that, our teachers, our parents, and then I go, okay, yep. They're teenagers at the end of the day. And so I know what it felt like. It's like, okay, yeah, this idea of authority, and then you have influence. And I think many students also are aware of that. Yeah, there's peer pressure to do certain things, and so that's another form of power. And I said, okay, then there's also resources, and they're extremely aware of that one for sure. Even I was extremely aware of that. Okay, some students didn't grow up with the best things in the world. Some students had, grew up in poverty, as I had done in some way or form. And so these are three major prevalent forms of power. Saying, well, if you have a lot of resources, you have a lot of money or something like this, then you can go far. If you don't, then you don't have that much power, so you can't go that far. And so I tell students, yes, but there's a fourth, form of power. Now, unlike the first three, they're easy to get and they're easy to lose. There's if you think about it carefully, you say, oh yeah, it's not that hard to get these. Sure, it requires a certain amount of skill sets and a certain amount of talent to get them, but it's not that hard, really, when you think about it, compared to the last one. The last one is knowledge. Knowledge is a form of power. The more you know, the more you're aware of, the more power is associated to you. And funny enough, if you have, and now it's the hardest one to get out of the other, right, compared to the other three. And this is what I tell students: like, it's the harder one to get. It's the one that you have to get for yourself. But guess what? Once you have it, people can't take it away from you.
It's true.
It's very difficult to take away your knowledge, what you know. And it frees you. It's a certain level of liberation you have when you know more things. And the cool thing about the fourth one is that it's once you have that one, you can easily get the other three.
That's very true, yeah.
and if they take the other three away from you, it's okay, because you can get them back again, because you still got the fourth one. And so I tell students, knowledge is power, right? There's something that you usually see in the slogans and such, but when
you don't know how to interpret, you don't know how to think about it. You just kind of read it like, oh, okay, it's just one other saying, but you have to really read into it.
Exactly. And so when I tell students this, and it changes their perspective. And a lot of these students, they have a certain outlook in the world, and I understand their frustrations and their anxieties, and also there's overall feeling of being, just being let down, or kind of the world, society, the world they look at, their viewpoint, from their vantage point, they feel like, I've been had in some way and form. The system's been rigged, against me. And I say, yeah, I understand how that feels. I was there as well, and I did feel this way. But I had realized early on, and saying, well, let's try an experiment. Let's see what we can do here, and absorb it. Just try it. Just try it for a couple of weeks, a couple of days, and see if you can absorb the content and focus. It's probably one of the hardest things for high school students to do, is to focus and say, okay, let's focus and put our efforts here. And for me, I had been more or less boxed into the situation where if I said, well, I could rebel, but I know what fate, I could rebel in the conventional, well, I say conventional in the way that I seen in my community do, but I knew where those paths led. Those paths led to some very negative outcomes, I said, okay. And said, well, then I could either do one or two things. I could just sit here and just let it happen, or I could just be swallowed up into mediocrity, right? And I wasn't very fond of mediocrity. I wasn't very fond of just, I just wasn't fond of it. I felt that my parents had given too much of a sacrifice, and I realized this, and too much had I gone through, my family had gone through too much pain and far too much suffering for me to just simply sit back and just say I'm going to be swallowed into mediocrity. And I said, no, I'm going to do the best that I can to be something other than mediocre. I don't know what that is. I don't know if it was excellence. I don't know what it was. At the time I was like, but I just can't sit around here and do nothing.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I remember saying. Like, I can't just sit around here and do nothing. I have to focus. Like, I have to do something. So, and
was that a sense of like kind of a, I don't want to say guilt, but like some pressure that, hey, they did this for you. They came to the United States for this. Now you have to do something.
No, I wouldn't. I see that happening many times. Many students feel that way, and in the sense of being guilt tripped into doing that. But
correct. Yeah.
No, I didn't feel that way. I felt that
You saw more of an opportunity, like empowerment, like the path was there, correct?
Yeah, it was more like that. It was more of my father, and my mother talking to me and making me aware that I was of their blood. I was of their bones, right? And they had this hardworking attitude and all of these great things. This overall grit perspective is what they had, and so they made me feel like, hey, Mauro, it's good to be what you are. It's good to be our son. So it's one of these where many times many students feel like this word minority, right? You're gonna be told that, okay, you're Latino and you're a minority stuff. It's always this. There's the power of words. It's very subtle. The subtle form of oppression how it's coupled in there, where you tend to feel, well, that's minority kind of gets close to inferior in some way or form, even though it's not always there. It's not a direct link. It kind of gets there, and so. But my parents were very keen on making me aware early on, and as did my family members, as we all did each other, saying, no, it's good to be what we are. We're hard workers, that we're Latinos. We have great music. We have great things in our culture, and our culture is built around this idea of working really hard. My father, if you look at my father and you say, okay, what is his culture? What is his major? His culture is hard work. That's what he does. That's what he's known for. That's hard work, and he loves it. He loves being known for. If you ever tell him, okay, if you use words to describe my father, and you say the words hard worker, he's like, yep, you got it. Yep. That's exactly right. That's because that's what I love to do, and that's what I am. And so he instilled that sense of, if you're ever Mauro, my son, if you ever known for anything, be known as a hard worker. And I said, yeah, okay, good. And so I believe that fully. And I felt this sense of overall, I didn't feel guilt. Instead, I felt like my father had realized within me the sense of, you can do anything. You have this capability of this talent of working hard. Now you don't have any specific. Now my father was very keen on saying, well, I don't have the greatest educational background in the world, right. So I cannot verify for you that you have a great affinity or talent for math or for science. I can't tell you that. My father was very keen on that, making that aware too. He was very aware, saying, look, son, I don't know. I'm limited even in my language skills. I only know Spanish, and I can't tell you that I'm great in math. I can't tell you that you'll be great in math. I can't tell you you'll be great at anything. But the one talent that I can impart onto you is hard work. And I can tell you that it's led me to be where I am today. And given the limited education, I went pretty far, huh? And I said, yeah, you're right. And so then I realized that, wow, if you get that education and coupled with that hard work, who knows what could happen?
Yeah, exactly.
And so that sense of pride, of hard work, that sense of grit is what they really poured onto me. So that by the time that I saw this opportunity early on in high school, and you saw this new chapter, and I said, yeah, let's work hard. For what? Well, to prove it, and to prove that I can work hard, and to prove to myself that I can learn. So what I would tell you is this. I had a particular dysfunctional relationship with the educational system. I had a particular dysfunctional relationship with education itself. But when it came to having whether or not I had a dysfunctional relationship with learning, I didn't have one. I loved it. I absolutely loved learning. I quickly grasped on my freshman and sophomore years in high school that I had a great functional relationship with learning. I said, yeah, I love to learn. It's good. It's really good because that's the power. That's the part of knowledge is power, right? And so if I couldn't have authority, because I was a so-called minority. If I couldn't have influence, right, because I was just one guy, I didn't have particular influences,
Nope.
and if I didn't have resources, right, I didn't have any resources other than what my father could do based on how hard he worked and money he got. And so I only had, even though I was limited in all these other three, then the last one I actually had was the one I could potentially access and actually be aware about and tap into was knowledge. And I said, okay, and where do I get this knowledge?
With
I
hard
need
work,
this knowledge if I
basically,
want
yeah.
to. It was education, and I said, okay, now do I have a dysfunctional relationship with learning? No, I don't. Okay, great. And then I have one with education because given the systems I grew up in and so on and so forth. And so yeah, but when it came to actually learning, and actually being there, as long as the teacher was there, providing the material somewhere for them, educating or teaching the material somewhere for them, I was more than being I was more than susceptible of being a willing student to learn, and so that's how it all coupled in general. It's hard to describe. I think even most students that get to where I am. You talk to graduate students nowadays, and you ask them, "Okay, how did you get here?" And they came from barrios like I did. They'll tell you that I don't know, they do know, but it's just hard for them to describe it. And I try my best to explain it to you and say that it's a combination of multiple things. This idea of dreams, this idea of the cruel reality, all of it being combined, and this idea of grit and hard work that couples in, and then you do your best and saying, well, I need to access this knowledge. Yeah. I need to tap into it, and let's run the experiment. Let us see who is right. And so it did become kind of this game. And I'll tell you this much: I was very attuned to the idea of it's me against the world. I think that's the idea. I was very attuned to my freshman year. I was like, okay, it's me against the world. Let's see who's right. Let's see. I chose the dreams. And you're presenting the cruel reality, or you're suggesting this, and I see the dropout rate. I came into a freshman class of around 600 students or 500 students, graduated in a class around 300, around 270 or so, a 50% dropout rate when I graduated from high school. So I saw it, and I realized it, and I said, okay, well, let's see who's right. It's either the world's right or I'm right, and I think that from there you transform your dreams, however amazing, fragile they may be. You transform your dreams, however fragile they may be, into very brand new realities, and the reality of your own world. So you transform your own world through the power of con ganas si se puede. Right?
Correct. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is the answer to question number 1. I'm just kidding. No, this is fascinating. So I'm curious. So did your parents ever have... So most Latino parents say, "Oh, okay, hey, mijo, you should be a lawyer, or you should be a doctor." Did they have anything in specific for you? Did they suggest anything, or did they kind of let you choose what you kind of discover what you wanted to do?
No, yes. My parents were again they were also very aware of the reality around us, and to them, their greatest goal, as it was mine, was to just get to 18. That was pretty much it. When I was from 14 to 18, it was just get to 18, grow up, and graduate from high school. So I should tell you this. The reason there was this high emphasis of get to 18 or just graduate from high school is because no other cousin of mine from my father's side, had actually graduated from high school. Right, now I'm not one of the most elder cousins. I am somewhere in the middle right now. And so none of them had graduated. Many of them had been forced out or kicked out, or many of them had dropped out or forced to drop out because of certain things. And so for them, it was one of those things. Well, you'll be the first of your entire generation to graduate from high school. And then for my uncles and my father, and not only one of them, my actual the youngest uncle that I had on my father's side had graduated from high school, which is a high school that I eventually graduated from as well, John F. Kennedy High School. And he was a great mentor of mine and great counsel of mine during that time. And his goal was too, hey, Mauro, just graduate from high school. You'll be the first one of your generation to do it. That's incredibly
accomplishment.
Yeah, exactly. So for them, that was the goal. So after high school, it was one of those things of it was staring down the darkness, the unknown, in the sense of saying, okay, what happens to Mauro after high school? Right. We're not sure. We're not aware. But let's just get him to graduate high school. And luckily, I had the fortune of, again, this administrator from Illinois coming in that year. I'm going
to stop you right there.
Yeah.
We've actually gone for a long time. So I think the smart thing to do right now is we'll probably divide this into 2 parts or 3.
Okay.
but I think we'll sign off for this part number 1. We won't do a tip. We'll probably add it on to part 2. But with that teaser of, let's say, how you got into your undergrad, and then later you do your master's, your PhD, definitely, I bet that's probably another episode or 2. Because already, I just feel for Mauro. And so I should explain how I kind of met Mauro as we sign off of part 1 is through the side of Hispanic Professional Engineers. And I remember instantly, he had this energy, this passion to kind of push Latinos into STEM and get them up there, because yes, knowledge is power. So with that said, thank you for being on.
Thank you for having
definitely
me.
having part 2. But thank you everybody for listening. Stay tuned for part 2 with Mauro Rodriguez, and I guess we'll end it here. So please check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and then we have a YouTube channel. So thank you everybody.